Okay, fine. You get your video on the Navy. You know, I was perfectly content to keep making 40k lore. My Age of Apostasy animations are coming along. I have a Sister of Battle video in the works. Navis Imperialis is gonna get its part 3. But no, you guys have to drag me kicking and screaming back to Halo, back to hell. Why? Why must you do this to me? Why can't you let me sit and be happy for 5 minutes? I now have to go back and deal with Halo's lore community. I mean, don't get me wrong, 40k has a very rabid community, but I had carved out a little chilled out corner for myself, you know? But you know what? At the very least, this is about the UNSC Navy. This just so happens to be one of my favorite pieces of fiction ever, and more than a few of my videos have centered around it. Granted, I do kind of need to update them because they either haven't aged well because of lore retcons or new lore, or, well, I just simply made some errors. So perhaps this is a blessing rather than a curse, I guess. The UNSC Navy is what I like to refer to as lightning in a bottle, because it genuinely really is well written for the most part. Despite what some people would have you believe, a lot of the UNSC Navy's lore kind of matches up with what you would expect of a spacefaring Navy, provided we aren't dealing with hard science fiction elements. To be clear, the UNSC Navy is not realistic at all, in the sense that it doesn't really operate in the bounds of reality despite paying lip service to physics. This isn't a bad thing, and I actually think Halo has some of the best engagements in science fiction because of this. It knows how to take basic orbital mechanics and Newtonian physics alongside other things, and, well, it mixes it with soft science fiction wonderfully. That said, Halo is just as willing to disregard physics for the sake of telling a thrilling story. Bear in mind that we are talking about having a ship fling ferric tungsten rods at 25% the speed of light, the infinity. But where the Navy is most realistic would be its procurement and crew policies. Although there are major glaring differences, all in all, you really only need to compare UNSC Navy procurement policy to that of, say, the United States and its procurement policies. You can see some thematic similarities. Namely, the UNSC Navy, like a real-life branch, bases its force transformation policies on the realities it will face, its experiences, and what it deems as a necessity. To be clear, I will be very adamant in declaring that fictional policy and real-life policy are not one and the same, and even if they may have similar beats, I hate that I have to remind people of this, but Halo is set in the 26th century in space, operating across the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy in a soft sci-fi setting. Trying to apply 19th, 20th, and 21st century modes of thinking one-to-one to this kind of setting, it's stupid. This video in particular is going to take crew sizes into account. Some people think that the crew sizes of certain UNSC ships, think the Strident class, are too small. This is an example of 21st century thinking coming back to bite everyone in the ass. The Strident class is 575 meters in length. This is larger than the Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier, which has thousands of sailors aboard. The Strident, on the other hand, has, give or take, 190. Yes, the UNSC calls the naval personnel sailors. This isn't accounting for any Marines that might be stationed to protect the ship, by the way, for the Strident. The thinking is that because something like the Gerald R. Ford has thousands of people working on it, that means we should have a comparable number of people on the Strident, or rather, more people on the Strident. This ignores the fact that Halo is at a point where cities are run by artificial intelligence, think the superintendent. Space elevators are considered a trivial matter of construction. Planet-spanning hubs of mass transit aren't uncommon. The manipulation of gravity is so ordinary. You have a sport that has dominated human culture for over a century. You can literally wear a computer as jewelry. Neural interfaces are used just as much to interact with technology as your hands, voice, and eyes are. Even the most basic colonies can rapidly industrialize because automatic assembly plants are just that compact, and they can be packed up and moved. You can mass fabricate structures and vehicles to swiftly establish yourself anywhere. Fusion powers most of human society. Cancer itself has been nearly eradicated for centuries, with new cases being so rare that people sometimes don't know it when they see it. Although it isn't shown that often in Halo, humanity has reached a point where you don't need a human for most things. Humans are still used in a variety of important roles. Ships are largely still self-sustaining in many instances. The crews are simply there to help that process along. Even without an AI, subroutines can keep a ship going for decades. Here's an example. The UNSC Spirit of Fire was adrift for nearly 3 decades, much longer than the lifespan of the shipboard AI Serena. Serena understood that she wouldn't be able to keep the ship in good condition on her own forever. She was going to die. So what did she do? She made sure the ship could take care of itself in her absence. The crew of a vessel is there to ensure the vessel's health remains in tip-top condition, and if need be, damage control for areas of high importance like the reactor. You don't need someone to worry about loading missiles because the ship will do that by itself so long as it has a stock. And, in the case of missile pods needing to be manually loaded, you're more likely to see another ship like a Cradle perform that task. You won't have someone manually operating the reactors beyond moments of necessity or emergencies because the ship can do that itself, and one single person on the bridge of a ship can just, well, decide what to do with it. People tend to think that a ship will not be able to automate itself without something like an AI, or smart AI specifically, which is typically reserved for ships of importance. Really, this is on Halo, as it presents itself a certain way to highlight the importance of characters like Isabel, Serena, Cortana, Roland, etc. Furthermore, the UNSC Navy tends to not make use of dumb AI because dumb AI don't have strong decision-making skills. That said, you don't need to have an AI to have machinery perform a job in place of a human. In the vacuum of space, this is actually a necessity. If there is a hull breach, it isn't like the crew will have much time to react. This isn't the ocean where water will flood in and the ship will sink. If a compartment depressurizes, it will vent its atmosphere, and it will do so in a rapid and explosive manner. Any human in that compartment will have no time to react before their instantaneous deaths. If no action is taken in microseconds, you could see neighboring compartments depressurize as well, thereby leading to a domino effect until the officers in the Citadel manually seal a compartment. This is inefficient, gets people killed, and throws the ship as a whole into chaos, thereby rendering it completely ineffective in a fight. With automation, this can be avoided as the machine will instantaneously react and seal compartments accordingly. This is probably why you see ships able to continue fighting even with serious battle damage. If need be, these automated systems can be controlled by a smart AI. While it does have issues with some bits of lore being outdated or retconned, the Fall of Reach demonstrates this perfectly. In Chapter 36, the Pillar of Autumn takes a direct hit from a plasma beam. Not only did the energy weapon rake across the Autumn's plates, it hit some of the ship's portside Archer missile pods, which caused a series of secondary detonations in the form of magazine explosions. The atmosphere was venting, there were fires on all decks and in all sections, and the primary fusion chamber was breached. Cortana was able to take control of the Autumn subroutines and essentially save the ship in seconds, allowing Keyes to focus on fighting. While some might argue that this happened because of Cortana, I would argue that Cortana just made the process vastly more efficient and saved the ship because of that. The mere fact that Cortana was able to act as damage control for the ship implies that the infrastructure was on board for the ship to handle these matters to begin with. Cortana was just able to hasten the process and prioritize certain areas, presumably directing the work parties to areas of importance all the while. In some cases, you just need a single AI to run the ship. Now, obviously, the only examples we have of this have been in times of desperation or emergency. You normally don't want your AI operating without at least a few parties ready to assist. Because even though, yes, machinery has mostly replaced humans in a lot of areas, machines still break. You will still need a person to fix the machine if need be, or sometimes you will need a person to manually do the job. Humans aren't performing the bulk of the workload, but they are still important, which is why they are still present. Humans can improvise. Humans can make decisions based on importance. Humans can strategize. Humans can go into a compartment if the sensors monitoring said compartment have been destroyed to see what the issue is. As the UNSC Navy has matured as a branch quite rapidly, it has gotten better and better and better at this. That's why you see such small crew sizes. Furthermore, The UNSC has had to operate this way by necessity and hard-learned lessons. People tend to forget how disastrous the Covenant War was for humanity. As time went on, it was increasingly difficult for the UNSC to not only produce ships, but staff them. That isn't because of a lack of manpower or resources. The UNSC has plenty of both, but it's not easy to replace trained crews. It's not easy to build new ships when the infrastructure to build them keeps getting destroyed. When you try to make a manned platform survivable, you are not doing it to preserve the platform, you are doing it to preserve the crew of that platform who is operating on said platform. A tank, as an example. If a tank is knocked out but the crew survives, the crew can bail out of the tank, get a new one, and get right back to fighting. If you lose both the tank and the crew, well, it doesn't matter if you have another tank. You now have to get a new crew to replace the people who died. And because of that, the new crew is less experienced, meaning that no matter what, the loss of the previous crew is a net loss. Not only did you lose a platform, you lost a trained, talented, experienced group of individuals. Take Lafayette G. Poole. He was considered one of the United States' best tankers in World War II, to the point that he is referred to as War Daddy. That man had to command 3 different tanks in his service. He was credited with 12 tank kills, 258 armored vehicle and self-propelled gun kills, and more. His first tank was knocked out in less than a week. Think about what would have happened if he and his incredibly talented crew had died in that tank. That's 12 German tanks that would have kept fighting, 258 vehicles and self-propelled guns that would have kept fighting. Although again, Halo isn't real life and most certainly isn't World War II, the principle of prioritizing the survival of skilled and trained crews will persist. It's just common sense. In the Covenant War, when a ship went down, often most of, if not all of the crew went with her. Not only did the UNSC have to replace the ship, they had to train a new crew with less experience and still growing talent. This is actually a detail you can see in the games. Boot up Halo 2 Anniversary, the in amber clad, look at how young Miranda's officers are and you will see exactly what I mean. In some areas, like the Prowler Corps, crews just didn't get rotated. The UNSC Dusk had to endure 18 months of continuous work and action without once getting a single break. This is really bad, simply put, and is indicative of a lack of people to replace someone. People get tired, people need time to breathe, people need time off the front, people get exhausted, humans will break down with time. And just as the Dusk finally got its rotation, the Battle of Earth forced it back into action, with 43 exhausted members of what would normally be 90 people. The UNSC Navy struggled to build ships at a rate that would at the very least replenish losses by the end of the war. It was arguably even more difficult to get new officers. Bear in mind, commanding a ship is not the same as being the regular run-of-the-mill Marine. First of all, you have a very limited pool of candidates. For regular work parties meant for staffing and maintaining a ship, most come from the Unified Combined Military Boot Camp. For fresh-faced recruits into the Navy, they have to endure extra training, usually 6 weeks, though I'd imagine during the war this was an expedited process, before being assigned to a ship. For more specialized areas, it gets tough. In particular, officers are very, very talented individuals that require specialized training. Most of them will come from an officer candidate school. Think Luna OCS Academy, the Reach Naval Academy, or the Corbulo Academy of Military Science. Although the curriculum will vary between schools, typically you'll find candidates have to attend 4 years of education. Now, to be clear, the process isn't inflexible, and we don't know much about it, so it's not like it's going to take 4 years to get a new crew in. Firstly, there's always a new bout of work parties being trained. That's the good news. Secondly, there's always going to be a class of students at OCS that are on the verge of graduating. Again, the problem isn't manpower. The problem is experience and talent. And it is often difficult to get that experience and talent back once you lose it. That's why the UNSC has placed an emphasis on smaller crews, more automation, and more modularity and survivability in their ships. Oh, your hangar bay is messed up? That's fine. The nearby cradle will help you out and get you a new hangar in a couple of hours. As for crews, the smaller sizes makes it easier to rotate them and make sure that someone is available to fill in for them. Let's take a Stalwart class light frigate as an example, just off the cuff of my memory. The Stalwart has anywhere from 250 to 280 sailors aboard. This would mean that the Trident has a little more or about the same as half of that number. So let's say a Trident replaces a Stalwart. You don't get rid of the excess crew. Instead, you have 190 people staffing the Trident. When it's time to rotate and give those 190 people a break, guess what? You now have 190 other people and presumably another set of officers to staff the Trident. Furthermore, if that Trident is lost with one crew, you still have another crew that is experienced and able to serve on another ship. Even so, the UNSC places an emphasis on making sure that, again, its crews survive. Post-war, the UNSC is not focused on churning out ships in massive numbers. It's focused on having a trained, talented, high-quality force with ships that do not require large crews. The Autumn class, 800 sailors. The Infinity class, 9,000 sailors despite being the largest ship class in the fleet. So no, UNSC crew sizes make perfect sense, fit in with the universe, and honestly, this is something I would do. Now, of course, I'm just an idiot on the internet, so that doesn't mean jack, but nevertheless, yeah. What do you guys think? I will see you in the cosmos, friends.